Admiral Vextar had seen many strange things during his 40 years commanding the Galactic Council Defense Fleet, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. His 6 eyes were locked onto the tactical display, watching readings that seemed to mock everything he knew about space travel and ship construction. The numbers kept changing, but they all pointed to the same impossible conclusion. 17 ships had just appeared out of nowhere at the very edge of Council territory, not gradually, like normal ships exiting hyperspace. Not with the usual energy discharge patterns that every known species produced. These vessels had simply materialized, as if they had been hiding in plain sight and decided to reveal themselves. "Commander Vec, run those scans again," Vextar ordered, his voice tight with concern. "There has to be an error in our sensors." His tactical officer, a young Altarian with nervous tentacles, worked frantically at his console. "Sir, I've run the scans 5 times. The readings are consistent. Each vessel measures just over 3 kilometers in length. They're enormous." Vextar felt his stomach drop. The largest ships in the Council fleet barely reached 2 kilometers. These unknown vessels dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. What about their construction? Can we identify the materials they're using? Commander Vec's tentacles drooped with frustration. "That's the problem, sir. Our scanners can't identify the whole composition. The computer keeps saying unknown alloy, but that's impossible. We have records of every material discovered in the last 1,000 years." Captain Rylana, Vextar's second in command, moved closer to the main display. Her crystalline features reflected the eerie light from the unknown ships. "Admiral, look at their energy signatures. They're not using any propulsion system we recognize. No plasma drives, no gravity manipulators, nothing in our database." The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. In all of galactic history, first contact with a new species followed predictable patterns. New civilizations used variations of known technology. They might be more advanced or more primitive, but the basic principles remained the same. These ships violated every rule. "Sir," the communications officer's voice cracked with excitement, "we're receiving a transmission from the lead vessel. They're requesting diplomatic contact." Vextar straightened his uniform and tried to project confidence he didn't feel. "Put it through to the main screen." The display flickered, and suddenly the bridge was looking at something that made several crew members gasp. A face appeared that looked almost familiar, yet completely alien. 2 eyes instead of the usual 4 or 6. Pale skin instead of scales or crystal formations. Hair that seemed to grow naturally from the scalp instead of being carefully cultivated like proper species maintained. But it was the eyes that disturbed Vextar the most. They were sharp and calculating, constantly moving as if cataloging every detail of the Council bridge. This being was studying them just as intensely as they were studying it. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Terran Defense Fleet," the creature said in perfect Council standard, though with an accent that sounded harsh and direct. "We come seeking dialogue with the Galactic Council leadership." Vextar's mandibles clicked together nervously, a habit he'd developed during stressful situations. "I am Admiral Vextar of the Council Defense Fleet. Your species designation and homeworld are not in our databases. Where do you come from?" Captain Morrison's expression remained completely neutral, but something flickered behind those strange eyes. "That's because your people classified our world as uninhabitable. We call it Earth. Your database is listed as a Class 12 Deathworld." The bridge fell into complete silence. Even the usual hum of the ship's systems seemed to quiet down. Class 12 Deathworlds were purely theoretical. They existed only in scientific models, as examples of planets so hostile that life could never develop there. Worlds with gravity so strong it would crush most known species. Atmospheres so toxic they would dissolve standard equipment. Weather patterns so violent they would tear apart any structure. "That's impossible," Vextar whispered, his voice barely audible. Nothing can live on a Class 12 world. Jake Morrison's face didn't change, but there was something almost like amusement in his voice when he replied. Yet here we are, Admiral. We've been watching your council space for quite some time, learning your languages and customs. We'd like to discuss membership in your organization. He paused, and that predatory smile appeared again. We believe we have much to offer. Vexter looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. Fear, confusion, and fascination mixed together in their expressions. Everything they thought they knew about the universe had just been challenged by these impossible beings from an impossible world. We should arrange a formal meeting, Vexter finally managed to say. Excellent, Morrison replied. We look forward to showing you what Earth's children can do. The Council's main diplomatic chamber had never felt so tense. Ambassador Lisa Rodriguez sat perfectly still in her chair, looking completely relaxed despite being surrounded by the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Her human posture was strange. To the alien delegates, she didn't hover like the gas-based species, didn't shift constantly like the insectoids, and didn't glow with emotional colors like the energy beings. She just sat there, breathing steadily, watching everything with those unsettling human eyes. The 12 Species Council had ruled the galaxy for over 3,000 years. They had seen countless civilizations rise and fall, welcomed hundreds of species into their ranks, and dealt with every type of crisis imaginable. But none of them had ever encountered anything like the humans. Counselor Thrix leaned forward, his crystalline body catching the chamber's light and throwing rainbow patterns across the walls. As the eldest member of the council, he had personally overseen first contact with 47 different species. His voice carried the weight of centuries when he spoke. Ambassador Rodriguez, you must understand our confusion. Your claims about surviving on a Class 12 Deathworld challenge everything we know about life in the universe. Explain to us exactly how your species managed to not just survive, but apparently thrive on such a hostile planet. Lisa smiled, and something about that expression made several council members shift uncomfortably in their seats. She reached for a small device on the table and activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. Let me start with something simple, she said, her voice carrying easily through the vast room. On Earth, we have something we call weather. Most of your worlds have stable atmospheric conditions, maybe some minor variations in temperature or precipitation. Earth is different. The hologram showed a swirling mass of clouds that seemed to be moving with impossible speed. The council members watched as the image zoomed in to show structures being torn apart by winds that moved faster than most of their atmospheric vehicles. This is what we call a hurricane, Lisa explained calmly. The wind speeds here are about 200 kilometers per hour. That's enough force to completely destroy your standard residential buildings. We get dozens of these every year. Counselor Yenth, whose species lived in carefully controlled biodomes, spoke up with obvious disbelief. Surely your people evacuate these areas when such storms approach. Some do, Lisa admitted, but our coastal cities are built to withstand these storms. We've learned to construct buildings that can handle these wind speeds. People often stay in their homes and wait for the storm to pass. The hologram changed to show an even more terrifying sight. A massive funnel of spinning air touched down from the clouds, moving across the landscape like a living thing. Everything in its path simply disappeared, sucked up into the vortex, or torn apart by the incredible forces. This is a tornado, Lisa continued, her tone still conversational. It's a focused wind vortex that can generate speeds of over 400 kilometers per hour. They can lift and carry your heaviest ground transport vehicles for several kilometers before dropping them. Counselor Felinari's tentacles began writhing with distress, a sign of extreme agitation in her species. Ambassador, surely your people take shelter in deep underground bunkers when these atmospheric weapons appear. Lisa's smile grew slightly wider. Actually, some humans deliberately chase these tornadoes. We call them storm chasers. They drive vehicles directly into the path of these storms to study them and collect data. It's considered an exciting recreational activity. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Several council members exchanged glances that clearly communicated their shared thought. These humans were completely insane. But weather is just the beginning, Lisa continued, changing the hologram again. Let me show you some of Earth's wildlife. The new image showed a massive, furry creature standing on its hind legs. Its claws were longer than most species' fingers, and its teeth looked designed for tearing apart metal. The creature casually approached what appeared to be a storage container and began ripping it apart as if it were made of soft fabric. This is what we call a grizzly bear, Lisa explained. They're about 2 meters tall when standing upright and weigh around 400 kilograms of pure muscle and bone. They're fairly common in our northern regions. Humans occasionally encounter them while hiking or camping. Counselor Kekken's multiple eyes dilated with shock. By the void, he whispered, "How do your young survive with such predators roaming freely?" Lisa's expression became almost fond. That's actually one of my favorite things about human culture. Our children often keep smaller predators as companions. We call them pets. Dogs, cats, sometimes even reptiles that could easily kill a child if they chose to. But they don't, because we've learned to live alongside these creatures. She changed the hologram to show human children playing with animals that the council recognized as apex predators from other worlds. You see, Earth didn't just teach us to survive, Lisa said, her voice taking on a tone that made the council members lean forward despite their fear. It taught us to adapt, to cooperate, and to find strength in the most dangerous situations. Every human child grows up learning that the universe is not a safe place, and that survival depends on intelligence, teamwork, and the willingness to face impossible odds. She stood up slowly, and her movement had a grace that spoke of controlled power. "We didn't come here as conquerors or refugees," she said. "We came as partners. Because Earth taught us that the strongest civilizations are built, not by avoiding danger, but by learning to thrive in it." The Council's testing facility had been built to accommodate every known species in the galaxy. The massive complex contained environments ranging from high-gravity chambers to underwater testing pools, all designed to push the physical limits of different alien physiologies. Dr. Yilmoth had personally overseen thousands of tests here, documenting the capabilities of every council member species. He thought he had seen everything the universe had to offer. He was wrong, Colonel. Mike Stevens walked into the main testing chamber wearing what he casually referred to as his standard field gear. To the alien observers, the human looked completely ordinary. Average height, normal build, nothing that suggested extraordinary physical capability. His equipment was simple too, just basic protective clothing and some lightweight armor plating. Dr. Yilmoth approached with his usual professional confidence, his multiple eyes scanning the human specimen with scientific curiosity. As the Council's chief physiologist, he had developed standardized tests that could accurately measure the physical capabilities of any known species. The tests started simple and gradually increased in difficulty. "Colonel Stevens will begin with basic strength assessment," Dr. Yilmoth announced, gesturing toward a series of weights arranged on the testing floor. "Please attempt to lift this training weight using whatever method feels most natural to your species." The weight in question was a solid metal cylinder that had been carefully calibrated. At 200 kilograms, it represented the maximum lifting capacity that the Council's strongest species could manage. The Gorillian warriors, famous throughout the galaxy for their incredible strength, could barely lift this weight using both hands and their specialized lifting techniques. Mike walked over to the weight, looked down at it for a moment, then casually grasped the handle with his right hand, without any visible effort, any strain on his face, or any of the preparation rituals that other species required. He simply lifted the massive weight off the ground and held it steady at shoulder height, Is this the warm-up weight? He asked, looking genuinely confused. Should I be feeling something by now? Dr. Yilmoth's multiple eyes began blinking in rapid sequence, a sign of extreme shock in his species. His voice came out as barely a whisper. Colonel, ... That weight represents the maximum lifting capacity for our strongest recorded species. The Gorillian warriors train their entire lives to achieve that level of strength. Mike looked down at the weight he was still holding effortlessly. Oh. He gently set it back down on the testing platform. Sorry, I didn't realize. Should I try using both hands? I can probably do quite a bit more, if you need me to. In the adjacent testing chamber, Captain Jennifer Walsh was demonstrating something that defied the laws of physics as the Council understood them. The Reflexes testing chamber fired projectiles at various speeds and angles, designed to test reaction times and defensive capabilities. Most species could track objects moving at subsonic speeds. The best could react to projectiles moving at the speed of sound. Jennifer was casually deflecting objects, moving at twice the speed of sound. Her movements looked almost like dancing to the observers. She would lean slightly to one side, and a projectile would whistle past where her head had been a fraction of a second earlier. She would take a small step backward, and 3 projectiles would pass through the space she had just occupied. The testing computer kept increasing the speed and number of projectiles, but Jennifer seemed to anticipate each one before it was even fired. How are you doing that? Asked Dr. Calvin, the Council's leading expert on neural response systems. Our sensors show you're reacting to projectiles before our targeting system has even calculated their trajectory. Jennifer finished deflecting another salvo of supersonic projectiles and turned toward the observation window. She wasn't even breathing heavily. This is pretty similar to our basic combat training on Earth, she explained with a casual shrug. We have flying insects that move faster than your projectiles, and weather conditions that change direction, unpredictably. Once you learn to deal with Earth's environment, everything else moves pretty slowly by comparison. Meanwhile, in the medical wing, Dr. Tom Bradley was undergoing the most comprehensive physical examination ever conducted by Council. Science. The results were reshaping everything the medical community thought they knew about biological limits. Dr. Bradley, said Dr. Yilmoth, reviewing the scanning results with obvious disbelief. Your bone density is approximately 3 times higher than our previous maximum recorded measurement. Your skeletal structure could theoretically withstand impacts that would completely shatter the bones of any known species. Tom nodded calmly from the examination table. Yeah, that makes sense. Human bones are designed to handle Earth's gravity and the constant physical stress of living there. We break bones pretty regularly as children, so they heal back stronger. Dr. Yilmoth moved to the next set of readings. Your muscle fiber configuration is unlike anything in our database. The density and arrangement suggest you could maintain peak physical performance for extended periods without fatigue. Earth doesn't really give you a choice about that, Tom replied. If you can't keep going when you're tired, you don't survive long enough to reproduce. The cardiovascular readings were equally astounding. Human hearts were apparently designed to function under stress levels that would cause cardiac failure in most other species. Their lung capacity and oxygen processing efficiency exceeded anything the Council had previously recorded. Dr. Yilmoth set down his scanning equipment and looked directly at Tom. Dr. Bradley, I must be completely honest with you. From a purely biological standpoint, your people are essentially living weapons. Every system in your body appears to be optimized for survival in hostile conditions. Tom considered this for a moment, then shook his head. I understand why you might see it that way, but you're missing the point. We're not weapons, we're survivors. Earth taught us that the universe doesn't care about playing fair. It doesn't matter if you're the smartest species or the most technologically advanced. What matters is whether you can adapt when everything goes wrong. He sat up on the examination table and looked around at the alien medical staff. Every human grows up knowing that survival isn't guaranteed. We learn early that you have to be ready for anything, because Earth will test you every single day. That's not about being violent or aggressive. It's about being prepared. Dr. Yilmoth made some final notes on his datapad. Colonel Stevens lifted our maximum weight test with one hand. Captain Walsh deflected supersonic projectiles like they were moving in slow motion. And your medical results suggest humans are biologically capable of surviving conditions that would kill most council species instantly. Tom smiled, and there was something both reassuring and unsettling about the expression. Doctor, you haven't seen anything yet? Wait until you meet our engineers. The sound that woke Admiral Vextar from his brief rest was one he had hoped never to hear again. The deep, haunting wail of the emergency klaxons echoed through every corridor of Council Central, the fortress station that served as the galaxy's military headquarters. He had heard those alarms only twice before in his long career, and both times had marked disasters that claimed millions of lives. Vextar rushed to the command center, his forelegs carrying him faster than he had moved in years. The main tactical display showed a sight that made his blood run cold. Hundreds of red dots were materializing at the edge of Council space, each one representing a ship in the most feared fleet in the galaxy. The collective had returned. Captain Rylena met him at the command console, her crystalline features dim with worry. Admiral, we have confirmed sightings across 17 sectors. Their bioships are emerging from hyperspace in coordinated waves. Early estimates suggest over 1,000 vessels. Vextar felt his heart sink. The collective wasn't just another hostile alien species. They were something far worse, a hive mind that consumed entire civilizations by converting every living being into extensions of their singular consciousness. 12 star systems had already fallen to their advance, each one stripped of all individual thought and merged into their ever-growing collective intelligence. Status of our defense fleets? Vextar asked, though he already feared the answer. We have 300 ships available for immediate deployment, Captain Rylena reported. But Admiral, our previous encounters with the collective showed us the problem. They don't fight like separate ships. They move as one massive organism. Every vessel knows exactly what every other vessel is doing. Their coordination is perfect. This was the nightmare scenario that had kept Council military strategists awake for decades. How do you fight an enemy that thinks with one mind? Council. Fleets had to rely on communication systems to coordinate their attacks. Captains had to receive orders, process them, and then execute them. Even with the fastest quantum communication networks, there were delays, misunderstandings, and the chaos that came with hundreds of individual minds trying to work together. The collective had none of these problems. Their ships moved like fingers on a hand, each one controlled directly by the same intelligence that controlled all the others. They could execute complex maneuvers that would take Council fleets hours to coordinate, and they could do it in seconds. Sir, the communications officer's voice cracked with urgency. We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Vextar had almost forgotten about the 17 human ships that had been stationed at the edge of Council space. In the face of 1,000 collective vessels, what could 17 ships possibly accomplish? Captain Jake Morrison's voice came through the speakers with that characteristic human calmness that Vextar was beginning to recognize. Admiral Vextar, this is the Terran fleet. We're detecting the collective formation and moving to intercept. Captain Morrison, Vextar responded quickly. You need to understand the situation. They have over 1,000 ships to your 17. This isn't a fight you can win. Fall back to the secondary defense line. There was a pause, and Vextar could almost hear Jake Morrison's smile in his voice when he replied. Roger that, Admiral. We understand the numbers. We faced worse odds while camping. Before Vextar could ask what camping had to do with space combat, the tactical display erupted into chaos. The 17 human ships had spread out across an impossible distance, each one moving on a completely different trajectory. To the Council observers, it looked like the human fleet had simply scattered in panic. The collective bioships moved to intercept, their perfect coordination allowing them to surround and overwhelm the dispersed human vessels. It should have been a massacre. Instead, something happened that defied every tactical manual in Council space. The human ships began to fight like nothing Vexstar had ever seen. They moved like a pack of the apex predators that Ambassador Rodriguez had shown them from Earth, each ship acting independently, yet somehow working together in perfect harmony. When one human vessel attracted the attention of multiple collective ships, another would appear from an unexpected angle to strike at their exposed flanks. When the collective tried to focus their overwhelming numbers on a single target, the humans would scatter and regroup before the hive mind could adapt. Commander Angela Hayes, piloting the lead destroyer, was somehow managing to engage 3 bioships simultaneously while maintaining constant communication with her scattered fleet. Her voice came through the comm channels with the same calm professionalism that seemed to characterize all humans. "This is Red Leader. Tyler, I need you to hit their left formation while I draw their main fire. Beth, come up from below and target their command ship. They can't track individual thinking patterns when we're all acting independently." What amazed Vexstar was that there was no central command giving orders to the human fleet. Each captain was making split-second decisions based on what they could see happening around them. Yet somehow, these individual decisions combined to create a strategy that was more effective than anything the Council's best tactical computers could have designed. The collective's hive mind, which had easily defeated every Council fleet by predicting and countering their coordinated strategies, couldn't process what the humans were doing. Every time the collective intelligence tried to predict the next move, 17 different human minds made 17 different decisions. The chaos of individual initiative multiplied across the entire fleet created a pattern too complex for even a hive mind to follow. Commander Tyler Chen, whose ship was badly damaged but still fighting, managed to disable a bioship twice his size by ramming it at exactly the right angle to collapse its organic hull. "That's for System 7, he transmitted, referring to one of the worlds the collective had consumed. Captain Beth Anderson coordinated a 3-ship attack on what appeared to be the collective's command vessel, her tactical decisions changing moment by moment as the battle evolved around her. "They're trying to adapt to our pattern," she reported. "Good thing we don't have one." Within 6 hours, the impossible had happened. The 1,000-ship collective fleet was scattered wreckage, drifting through space. Not a single human vessel had been destroyed, though several bore damage that would have crippled Council ships. Admiral Vexstar stared at the tactical display in complete silence. Everything he thought he knew about space combat had just been rewritten by 17 ships from a world that wasn't supposed to support life. "Captain Jake." Morrison's voice came through the comm one final time. "Admiral, this is the Terran fleet. Collective threat has been neutralized. We're standing by for cleanup operations." "How?" was all Vexstar could manage to say. "Earth taught us that the best way to survive is to be unpredictable," Jake replied. "Apparently, that works in space, too." The transformation happened faster than anyone expected. Within just 1 month of the collective's defeat, the entire structure of galactic civilization had changed, not through conquest or force, but through something the galaxy had never experienced before: voluntary cooperation, based on mutual respect and shared strength. Admiral Lisa Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, Earth's first permanent installation in Council space. The massive orbital platform had been constructed using a combination of human engineering and alien technology, creating something that neither species could have built alone. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see ships from dozens of different worlds docking and departing, their crews working together in ways that would have been impossible just weeks earlier. The ceremony taking place in the station's main assembly hall was being broadcast across the entire galaxy through the quantum communication network. Representatives from over 200 worlds had gathered to witness the formal establishment of what they were calling the Terran Defense Compact, not because humans controlled it, but because Earth's approach to survival had inspired its creation. Lisa approached the podium, looking out at an audience that included species she was still learning to recognize. They were the crystalline Altarians, their bodies refracting the chamber's light into beautiful patterns. The insectoid men, whose complex compound eyes could see across multiple spectrums simultaneously. The gaseous nebulans, existing in specially designed containment suits that allowed them to interact with solid matter species. Each of these civilizations had spent thousands of years developing their own unique solutions to survival. The Alt had mastered energy manipulation on a quantum level. The Mantilians had developed biotechnology that could reshape living organisms at will. The Nebulans had learned to exist in the vacuum of space itself, drawing energy directly from stellar radiation for millennia. The old council had treated these differences as problems to be managed rather than strengths to be celebrated. Each species had been assigned specific roles based on their perceived limitations. The energy beings handled power systems. The insectoids managed biological research. The crystalline species dealt with communications. But the humans had shown them something different. "Friends and allies," Lisa began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems that allowed every species to understand her words. "1 month ago, many of you had never heard of Earth or humanity. We were newcomers from a world you had classified as uninhabitable, arriving with ships you couldn't understand and capabilities that challenged everything you thought you knew about survival." She paused, looking around the assembly hall at faces and forms that represented the incredible diversity of galactic life. "We learned something important during our long history on our dangerous world. We learned that diversity isn't a weakness to be overcome, it's the greatest strength any civilization can possess. Every species that joins our compact brings something unique, something the universe has never seen before." Captain Jake Morrison, now serving as Earth's primary ambassador to the Council, stepped forward to continue the address. His role had evolved from military commander to diplomat, though those who knew humans understood that the distinction wasn't as clear as other species might assume. "The collective failed not because they lacked power or numbers," Jake said, his words resonating through the chamber. "They failed because they tried to make everything the same. They consumed diversity and replaced it with uniformity. They turned the beautiful complexity of individual consciousness into a single, predictable voice." He gestured toward the assembled representatives, his expression conveying both respect and determination. "We succeed because we do the opposite. We celebrate what makes each species special. When the Altarians share their energy manipulation techniques with human engineers, we create power systems that neither of our species could develop alone. When Mantilian biotechnology combines with human adaptability, we find solutions to problems that seemed impossible." The changes weren't just happening at the diplomatic level. Throughout Council space, individual species were beginning to experiment with concepts that humans had introduced: the idea that individual initiative could coexist with group cooperation, that questioning authority could actually strengthen organizations, and that taking calculated risks often led to breakthrough discoveries. On the industrial world of Kepler Prime, Mantilian workers had begun proposing modifications to manufacturing processes, something that would have been unthinkable under the old system's rigid hierarchies. Their suggestions had increased productivity by 40% while reducing resource consumption. In the research stations orbiting Proxima Centauri, Altarian scientists were collaborating directly with human engineers, sharing ideas freely, rather than working within the compartmentalized structure that had limited innovation for centuries. Even the military had been transformed. The old Council defense fleet had operated with strict chains of command and standardized tactics. The new Terran Defense Compact encouraged individual ship commanders to adapt their strategies based on real-time conditions, leading to a level of tactical flexibility that made them nearly impossible to defeat. Admiral Vexstar, who had initially been terrified by humanity's arrival, now served as the primary liaison between the old Council structure and the new compact. His role involved helping traditional species understand and adapt to the human approach without losing their own cultural identities. He had spent the past week preparing his final report on the transformation, and as he watched the ceremony, he reflected on how much had changed since that first moment when 17 impossible ships had appeared at the edge of Council space. The arrival of the Deathworlders changed everything, he had written in his report. They didn't conquer us or demand our submission. Instead, they offered us something we had never experienced: true partnership based on mutual respect and shared strength. He looked around the assembly hall, watching as species that had barely interacted for centuries were now working together on projects that would benefit the entire galaxy. They taught us that survival isn't about being the strongest or the smartest, his report continued. It's about being adaptable, diverse, and united by choice rather than force. They showed us that the universe's greatest strength lies not in uniformity, but in the beautiful, chaotic symphony of individual voices choosing to sing together. As the ceremony concluded, and representatives from hundreds of worlds pledged their commitment to the new alliance, Vexstar realized that the humans had given the galaxy something more valuable than military protection or technological advancement. They had given them hope for a future where every species could contribute their unique gifts to something greater than themselves. Earth's children had arrived, carrying a simple but revolutionary message: that the differences between species weren't obstacles to overcome, but the very foundation upon which a truly strong civilization could be built.